I grew up in the shadow of my older sister, Leah. That's just how things worked in our family. She was the golden child, the beacon of hope, the walking embodiment of our parents' dreams. Me? I was. Background noise. Decoration. The kid they remembered when it was convenient. The first time I really felt it, I was 6. Christmas morning, Leah unwrapped the newest iPad 1 with the sparkly pink case. She'd circled in the catalog months earlier. The whole room lit up with her smile. Mom clapped, Dad beamed, and I just sat there peeling wrapping paper off a box of socks. Not even fun socks. Just white, plain, and 2 sizes too big. I remember holding one up and laughing a little. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't want to cry in front of everyone. Thanks, I said, trying to sound grateful. Mom barely looked at me. That kind of thing became a tradition. When Leah turned 16, she got a car, a cherry red Mazda, with a giant bow on the hood and a full tank of gas. When I turned 16, I got a lecture about bus schedules and a second-hand bike with rusted handlebars. Leah got her college fully paid for. Dorm decorations, a MacBook, everything. I got a printout of FAFSA forms, a pat on the back, and a grim reminder that nothing worth having comes easy. I played along for a while. I mean, what else could I do? I learned to patch my own tires, balance 2 part-time jobs during school, and pretend it didn't sting every time. I saw our fridge plastered with Leah's Dean's List certificates. Mom would look at those little rectangles of achievement like they were lottery tickets themselves. Our house was classic suburban monotony: peach siding, creaky floorboards, a garage that never fit a car because Dad insisted on storing 5 years' worth of paint cans just in case. It wasn't glamorous, but it was home, or at least Leah's home. I always felt like a guest. By the time we both graduated college, her first, naturally, our family threw a party that could have doubled as a wedding reception. Fancy venue, custom cake shaped like a graduation cap, even a string quartet playing Vivaldi. At the end of the night, our parents handed her a velvet box with keys inside. "To your new condo," Dad said, nearly choking up. "You earned it." I smiled. I clapped. I even toasted her with a glass of overpriced champagne. A year later, when it was my turn to graduate, I got dinner at Olive Garden. No string quartet, no guests, just me, my parents, and the soft clinking of silverware over fettuccine Alfredo. When dessert came, Dad slid a plain white envelope across the table. Inside, a scratch-off lottery ticket. "We thought this would be fun," Mom said brightly, like I was 5 again. I laughed. What else could I do? "No pressure, but if you win the jackpot, maybe you'll be the one buying the next house," Dad joked. They all laughed. I didn't. Back in my cramped apartment that night, I tossed the ticket into my junk drawer and forgot about it. It sat there between broken pens and expired coupons, mocking me with the vague promise of luck I didn't believe in. The thing is, I wasn't even mad. Not really. That level of disappointment had become a dull hum by then, like a refrigerator running in the background. You stop noticing after a while. But the more I thought about it, the more that stupid little ticket started to feel like a punchline. Leah got security, a future. I got a $2 shot at a dream, a gamble disguised as a gift. When I vented to my roommate, Austin, he looked at me like I'd said my parents kicked my dog. "They gave your sister a whole-ass condo and gave you a lottery ticket? Are they? Okay." That was the first time I allowed myself to think that maybe it wasn't normal. That week, I dug out that ticket and stared at it. The glossy front, the tiny odds printed in invisible ink on the back. 1 in 200 million. Those were my chances. I laughed again. It felt weird, too sharp. Then, I dropped it back in the drawer. Time passed. I kept working at the boutique ad agency that paid just enough to keep the lights on, but not enough for anything else. I picked up a weekend barista job at the cafe down the street, where my manager still thought my name was Kayla, even though I'd corrected her 5 times. Leah, meanwhile, got engaged to some finance guy named Derek, who wore loafers without socks and called beer hoppy water. Their engagement pictures were everywhere. Dad made one his phone background. Mom had a custom mug printed with their faces. I wasn't in any of the pictures. I didn't expect to be. The group chat, which was really just Leah Appreciation Central, kept blowing up with wedding plans, honeymoon ideas, and the occasional look what Derek got me selfie. A handbag here, a spa day there. Our parents paid for all of it, obviously. Then one day, Mom texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, sweetheart, Leah's housewarming party is Sunday. Can you bring chips or something?" No invitation, just an assignment. That night, I came home exhausted after a double shift, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed on the couch. As I reached for the remote, I spotted the lottery ticket in the drawer again, barely visible beneath a pile of old receipts. I pulled it out, I stared at it, and I scratched it. The numbers appeared slowly, teasingly, then silence. I blinked, checked again, and again. I grabbed my phone and opened the state lottery website. I typed in the numbers, waited. My breath caught in my throat. The screen flashed. "Congratulations, grand prize winner." The number beneath it, $112,500,000. I dropped my phone. It slid under the couch. I sat frozen, staring at that piece of paper like it might explode. No way. For a minute, all I could hear was my own breathing. Then I started laughing. The kind of laugh that's a little too loud, a little too close to crying. They gave me a scratch-off as a joke. And I won. They gave Leah a house. And now I could buy an entire neighborhood. But the real win? That was still to come. I sat there on the floor for what felt like forever, staring at the lottery ticket like it might sprout wings and fly away. My phone was still somewhere under the couch, but I didn't move. I didn't even breathe right. What do you even do when your whole life changes in an instant? No screaming, no jumping around, just shock. Like my brain refused to process that this wasn't some messed up prank from the universe. I finally crawled under the couch, grabbed my phone, and checked the numbers again. Yep, still there, still real. $112 million. I put the ticket back in the drawer this time, under a layer of random junk, and just sat on my bed, staring at the wall. I had no idea what to do next. No guidebook, no hotline for people whose lives just did a full 180 without warning. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. I made coffee for strangers, answered emails I didn't care about, smiled at a boss who once called me Lisa for a full year. It was surreal. Every task felt meaningless, like I was in a simulation pretending to be poor while a golden ticket waited in my kitchen drawer. The only person I told was Naomi, my best friend since high school. She's the kind of person who never overreacts, even when she probably should. Her exact words? "Holy crap. Okay, first, we're not telling anyone. Second, we need a plan." That's why I trusted her. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't scream or cry or pitch some wild dream about yachts and vacations. She just sat next to me with a notebook and started listing things we needed to figure out. Lawyer, financial advisor, Dodimus claim options, taxes. She Googled while I paced. "You know," I said after a while, "they gave me that ticket as a joke." "Yeah," Naomi muttered, typing. "And the joke's about to be very expensive for them." That stuck with me. Because even with all this money, I didn't feel happy, not yet. I felt something else. Vindicated. For the first time, I had the upper hand, and I wasn't going to waste it. Over the next few weeks, Naomi helped me put together a low-key plan. I found a lawyer named Andrew, who specialized in lottery winners. Quiet guy. Sharp eyes. He walked me through everything: how to claim anonymously, set up an LLC, dodge media attention, and build walls between myself and anyone looking to take advantage. My winnings came out to about $70 million after taxes. Still insane. The day I cashed the check, I didn't buy anything flashy. No Ferrari. No designer wardrobe. I just paid off my student loans and bought a used Prius. Black. Low profile. Then I quit my job at the cafe and the agency on the same day. No drama. Just short, polite emails. Thanks for the opportunity. Naomi and I celebrated with takeout and cheap wine, sitting on the floor of my apartment like we used to in college. "You gonna tell them?" she asked. I knew exactly who she meant. My family. I took a sip of wine. Nope. I wasn't being spiteful. Okay, maybe a little. But mostly, I wanted time. I needed to figure out who I was without their voices in my head, telling me I was never enough. So I moved. Not far. Just far enough. I found a cozy 2-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood, nothing flashy, but modern and warm. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Lots of light. A kitchen that didn't look like it came out of a 1998 catalog. I paid in full and didn't tell a soul. I changed my number, kept my old email just to keep tabs, but created a new one for everything else. It felt like shedding a skin I didn't realize I'd outgrown. Meanwhile, Leah's wedding machine was still going strong. The family group chat was non-stop. Venue hunting, cake tasting. Derek's mom wants doves. I didn't respond. I didn't even open most of the messages. Then one day, Mom texted me directly. "Hey sweetheart, haven't heard from you. You okay? We miss you. Leah says hi." No mention of visiting, no actual interest in my life. Just guilt, wrapped in emojis. I didn't reply. That's when it started, the curiosity. The slow, creeping interest in where I'd gone, what I was doing. It started with Leah, of course. She texted one afternoon. "Hey, heard you quit your job. Everything all right?" I stared at it for a while, then put my phone face down. I wasn't sure if she actually cared or if she just wanted to feel superior. That was kind of her thing, playing supportive sister when there were witnesses. A few days later, Dad emailed me. An actual email. Subject, just checking in, "Hey, kiddo, heard you moved. Your mom's been a little worried. Just let us know you're doing okay. Love, Dad." I didn't answer that either. It's not that I wanted to hurt them, I just didn't owe them anything. Not after years of being invisible. Not after they spent Leah's tuition, mortgage, and wedding fund like Monopoly money, while I scraped by on their pep talks and scratch-offs. I was rebuilding, quietly, carefully. Naomi helped me furnish the condo, mostly online orders. We kept things neutral and simple. Clean lines, warm tones, nothing that screamed secret millionaire. I didn't want the money to change me, but I also wasn't going to let anyone else touch it. Leah's wedding came and went. I didn't attend. Not out of bitterness, but because they didn't invite me. Not formally, just a message in the group chat that read, "Leah and Derek's big day is next weekend. I guess we'd love for you to be there," was too much to ask. I stayed home, baked cookies, and watched a documentary about wild horses. It was peaceful, quiet, mine. Then the photos started rolling in. Leah in her designer gown, Derek in his tailored tux. Our parents standing proudly between them, all champagne and matching smiles. Caption, "Proud parents." Couldn't be happier. I scrolled through them like I was viewing strangers' vacation photos. Then I got to the last one. It was Leah and Derek standing on the front steps of a brand new house. Leah held a little sign that said, "Home Sweet Home," and the caption read, "Our wedding gift from the fam." Another house. Another massive gift. And suddenly I didn't feel peaceful anymore. I felt focused. Because if they thought that house was impressive, they had no idea what was coming. After seeing that photo of Leah and Derek smiling on their new porch, courtesy of the fam, something in me shifted. I didn't rage, didn't cry. I just felt this clarity, this cool, focused energy I hadn't known I was capable of. Let them enjoy their gift. I had something better. The silence from me must have been louder than I thought. Because 2 weeks later, Mom called again. I let it ring, then ring again. Finally, I answered not because I wanted to, but because curiosity got the best of me. "Hey, Mom." "Oh, thank God," she exhaled, like I'd just emerged from a coma. I was starting to worry. "You okay?" I asked, dry as toast. "Yes, of course. We've just been busy. Leah's housewarming brunch was lovely. We should have invited you, should have." "Right. How's everything with you?" she added quickly, like an afterthought. "Fine," I said, sipping coffee from my overpriced ceramic mug. "Settling into the new place." She perked up at that. "New place?" "Yeah. Moved a few months ago. Needed more space." "Oh, you didn't tell us. Didn't think it mattered." That shut her up for a beat. "Well, I hope the rent's not too bad," she said eventually, tone laced with concern that sounded more like a math problem. "Things are expensive these days." I smiled. "I'm managing." We wrapped up the call with the usual small talk. How's work? How's traffic? How's the weather? I hung up and just sat there, staring out at my view of the hills and the distant city lights. They still thought I was scraping by. I liked it that way. Later that week, I met with Andrew, my lawyer, and Carol, my financial advisor. I'd told them I didn't just want to preserve the money, I wanted to grow it. Quietly, responsibly, but with intent. Carol grinned. Now that's a mindset I can work with. We moved smart. I bought into real estate 2 modest rentals under an LLC with a generic name. I invested in a few promising startups, opened a brokerage account, and even started donating to a nonprofit that helped first-gen college students. Felt poetic. Then I did something that felt indulgent. I bought a house. Not just any house. One in Leah's neighborhood. A few streets over, but bigger. More modern. Built on a slight hill, which gave me a clearer view and better sunlight. It was perfect. Vaulted ceilings, quiet street, and a backyard big enough for hosting or not. I didn't throw a party. Didn't post it online. I just moved in, box by box, alone and content. A week later, I was sipping tea on the back deck when I saw Leah jogging by. She didn't see me, but I saw her pause at the corner, squint up at my place, and then jog off a little slower. That was the first time I felt the hum of power. Not arrogance, just presence. Like for once I wasn't hiding in the background. Word must have traveled, because the next week, I got a text from Leah. "Hey, thought I saw you near Oak Ridge? You moved here?" I didn't answer right away. Eventually I replied, "Yeah, needed some space. It's peaceful here. 3 dots. Then, that's awesome. You should stop by sometime. Derek's been working on the patio. We'd love to catch up." I knew what this was. Curiosity, camouflaged as warmth, but still, part of me wanted to see how far this went. So I said, "Sure, I've got time Sunday." Sunday came, and I walked the 3 blocks to their house with a bottle of wine tucked under my arm. Theirs was cute cream siding, lots of potted plants that lived in Pinterest look. Leah answered the door with a big smile and a hug that was 2 seconds too long. "You look amazing," she said, stepping back to scan me. "Thanks," I said. "You too." Derek appeared, wearing a half-buttoned shirt and that smugness some men confuse with charisma. We made small talk on the patio while they showed off their string lights and outdoor furniture set. "You should see the basement," Leah said, eyes bright. "We're turning it into a media room, eventually. Once we sort out the budget." I nodded politely, taking a sip of wine. Derek leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "So, you moved into that big modern place up the hill?" I raised a brow. "You've been scouting?" He laughed. "Hard to miss. That place is insane." "What do you do now?" I paused. "Investments. Crypto? Nope. Real estate? Among other things." Leah tilted her head. "Wait, what happened to the agency? And the barista job?" I shrugged. Didn't feel like pouring coffee forever, so I switched things up, more silence. Then Derek tried to recover. "Well, that's awesome. Maybe you can give us some tips. We've been thinking about buying a rental. Get passive income going." I smiled. "Sure. Let me know when you have 6 figures of capital lying around." Leah laughed, a little too loudly. The visit ended on a weird note, friendly enough, but with the tension hanging in the air like unspoken questions. That night, Mom texted me. "Leah says your new house is stunning. Why didn't you tell us?" I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet of my rental income, updated a few figures, and watched the numbers climb. It wasn't about the money. It was about control. I had spent my whole life trying to earn their approval, working hard, staying humble, never rocking the boat. But now I didn't need them, and they knew it. Over the next few months, the text came more often. "You should come over for dinner. We're thinking of renovating the kitchen." Derek's brother quoted us $28. Insane, right? "Just curious who helped you get your mortgage." Ours is brutal. Each one was dipped in curiosity, occasionally coated in flattery, but always reaching. The best one? We were thinking of hosting Leah's baby shower next spring. It'd be so lovely if you could host. Your house is perfect for entertaining. I stared at that message, then set my phone down and laughed. Not bitter, not cruel, just done. They'd built their whole narrative around me being the one who never quite made it, the runner-up, the understudy. And now, they needed me. But I wasn't handing out anything. Not anymore. It didn't take long after that baby shower text for the real motives to surface. At first, it was little things. Mom texting me recipes you could totally try in your gourmet kitchen. Leah asking for interior inspo because you have such an eye for modern design. Derek randomly mentioning lawn care companies in my area. They're pricey, huh? It was all fluff on the surface. But I knew what they were circling. They'd realized I wasn't broke anymore, and they wanted in. One Sunday afternoon, I got a voicemail from Dad he rarely called. "Hey kiddo, your mom and I were talking. We thought it'd be great to have a family dinner. Just the 5 of us." "No big deal. Just come by. Leah misses you." Right? Leah misses me the same way a cat misses the mouse it forgot to play with. Still, I went. Not because I missed them, but because I needed to see where this was headed. They hadn't changed a bit. The same old house. The same beige walls. The same living room filled with photos of Leah. None of me, of course. Dinner was baked chicken, overcooked and dry. Mom kept glancing at Dad, waiting for him to say something. Finally, he cleared his throat. "So, we've been thinking. Here it comes. We're hoping to remodel the kitchen," he said. "Just a few upgrades. Cabinets, maybe new appliances." I nodded slowly. "Sounds nice." Mom jumped in. "We figured, with you doing so well now, maybe you'd want to help out. Give back." There it was. Give back. Not, "We're proud of you." Not, "Tell us how you did it," just a handout. I leaned back in my chair and looked at them both. "Help how?" Mom smiled, soft and sweet. "Well, a little financial support would go a long way, and it means so much to us. After everything we've done," she let that one hang in the air. Everything they'd done. I looked around at the walls, the photos, the memories that never included me. "Sure," I said. Mom's eyes lit up. Dad looked stunned. "Really?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Send me the quote." They both relaxed, smiled. Acted like this was how things had always been, like I'd always been this generous daughter, ready to open my wallet at the first sign of drywall damage. That night, I went home and waited. A week later, I got an email from Leah. Not Mom, not Dad. Subject, kitchen estimate and bonus ask. Attached was a PDF with a contractor, quote, totaling $48,000. Cabinets imported from Italy. Appliances worthy of a chef, marble countertops. And beneath that, a second attachment labeled Derek's new business launch. Apparently, Derek was planning to start a luxury home gym brand. He needed investors. The email ended with, "Thought it'd be cool if you were the first one to believe in us." I stared at my screen. No greeting, no "how have you been?" Just a request for nearly $100,000. Like I was an ATM with no PIN required. I replied one sentence, "I'll think about it." Then I blocked Leah's email. I didn't respond to Mom's follow-up texts either. They came in waves. "Did you get the estimates?" "No rush. Just wondering if you had thoughts." "Your sister is really counting on your help with the business thing." It went on for days, weeks. And just like that, the vibe shifted. They went from sugar to vinegar real quick. Mom called one evening, voice tight. "We just don't understand. We've always supported you." I almost laughed. "You mean emotionally?" I asked. "Because I don't remember that part." Silence. "Look," I said calmly, "I'm not funding Leah's fantasy kitchen or Derek's wannabe brand. I worked hard to build something for myself, and I'm not throwing it away for people who only remember I exist when they want something." "You're being ungrateful," she snapped. I didn't even flinch. Funny. That's what I used to think every time you ignored my milestones. I hung up before she could respond. It was quiet for a while after that. No texts, no emails, no calls, and it felt good. Until one afternoon, Naomi called me. "You're not gonna believe this," she said. "Check Facebook. Your sister's page." I hadn't been on Facebook in months, but I logged in, stomach twisting with curiosity. There it was. A post from Leah. Some people forget family when they get a taste of money. But real success is about who you take with you, not who you leave behind. It had over 200 likes. Aunt Carol commented with praying hands. A few cousins left passive-aggressive comments like SMH. Some people never appreciate where they came from. No names, but it was clear. That was for me. They wanted to shame me into folding. They wanted the pressure, the guilt, the eyes. What they didn't realize, they'd spent years teaching me how to be invisible. Now they couldn't stand that I'd made myself seen on my own terms. The next morning, I called Carol. My financial advisor. Let's move forward on that foundation we talked about, I said. She perked up. You sure? Yep. Scholarships, mentorship, small grants. All for students like me, ones who get left behind while their siblings shine. She was quiet for a second, then said, That's badass. I smiled. Yeah, it is. We set everything in motion. A website, a quiet launch, a clear mission. No family names, no press releases, just action. I wasn't just hoarding money. I was building something real, something lasting. The family didn't need to know. And I didn't care if they found out later. In fact, part of me hoped they would, because this wasn't revenge. This was balance. This was me finally stepping into my own story, not as the forgotten sibling, not as the financial afterthought, but as someone who made it without their approval, and who wasn't afraid to say no. 2 weeks after the Facebook post, I started getting the calls. Not from mom, not from dad, from people I hadn't heard from in years. Cousins, aunts, a couple of high school friends who hadn't spoken to me since graduation, all suddenly curious about how I was doing, if I was free to catch up, if I wanted to come to a family potluck that hadn't existed until 5 minutes ago. The last straw? My Uncle Ron, who once told me I should smile more if I wanted a husband, texted me, Hey superstar, heard you're doing big things. Let's grab lunch sometime. I blocked him before I finished reading. They knew. Someone had cracked the silence. Probably Leah. Maybe Derek. Probably both. I didn't care. I'd already decided I wasn't hiding anymore. So when I got the next text from Leah, I didn't ignore it. Hey, can we talk? In person? I waited a few hours, then wrote back, Sure, come by Saturday. No more silence. No more hiding. Let her see the life she never thought I'd have. Saturday came fast. The sky was cloudy, the air cool, the kind of weather that feels like a sigh. I made tea, left the front door unlocked. When Leah walked in, she paused just inside the doorway. Her eyes scanned the place, wide open living room, warm wood floors, art I actually liked on the walls. She stepped in slowly, almost cautiously. This is, wow, she said. I didn't say anything, just handed her a mug and sat down at the kitchen island. She followed, still glancing around like she was waiting for someone to jump out and yell, Surprise! This place is beautiful, she said, finally settling into the stool across from me. Thanks. She stared at her tea, then looked up. Why didn't you tell us? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the counter. Would you have cared? She blinked. Of course. I gave her a look. She sighed. Okay, maybe not at first, but we're sisters. No, I said calmly, we're related. You were the favorite. I was the filler. That's not sisterhood. That's casting. The words hit hard. I saw it in her eyes. Look, she said, voice softer. I know things weren't equal, but we were kids. That was mom and dad's doing. And you never once stood up for me. Silence. She didn't argue. She knew. I continued. You got the car, the college fund, the condo, the wedding. I got a scratch off. Remember that? She looked away. Do you know what I did with that ticket? She shook her head slowly. I won. Her eyes snapped back to mine. Excuse me? I won. The jackpot. Millions. Leah blinked, swallowed, set her tea down carefully. You're kidding. Nope. That joke of a graduation gift? Paid for this house. Paid off my loans. Built 2 rental properties and funded a scholarship program. Her mouth opened, then closed. Like her brain was rebooting. I thought you were. You said you were working at that cafe. I was. Until I wasn't. She sat back in her seat, stunned. Why didn't you tell us? I tilted my head. Why would I? You made it clear I was an afterthought. Suddenly I'm valuable when I have something you want? I didn't. You asked me to fund Derek's business. That was different. I raised an eyebrow. Different how? She opened her mouth, then sighed again. Okay, fine. It was selfish. I didn't know you had this whole life. That's because you never asked. The truth landed like a stone between us. She stared at the granite countertop, chewing the inside of her cheek. I was jealous, she said quietly. That surprised me. Of me? Yeah, she nodded. I got everything handed to me, and I still feel like I'm drowning. Derek's business failed. We're bleeding money. The mortgage is suffocating. And then I see you calm, successful, happy, and I realized I don't even know who you are anymore. I took a slow breath. I didn't want revenge, Leah. I just wanted to matter. And when I stopped trying to prove myself to everyone, everything changed. She looked up again. Her eyes were glassy, but she wasn't crying. Not yet. I'm sorry, she said. I believed her. Mostly. I'm not your savior, I said, and I'm not your ATM, but I'm not cruel either. I just want space. Real space. She nodded slowly. Okay, we sat there in silence for a minute. Two people finally seeing each other without filters or roles. Before she left, she paused at the door. I meant it, she said. This place is beautiful. Thanks, I replied. I earned it, and I closed the door behind her. That night, I sat on the deck, watching the sky fade into that deep blue that comes before full darkness. I wasn't angry, I wasn't bitter, I was tired, but the good kind. The kind of tired that comes after building something with your own hands. A few minutes later, Naomi showed up with a bottle of red and a grin. Heard the family reunion went nuclear, she joked, dropping into the patio chair beside me. Not nuclear, I said. Just honest. She poured 2 glasses and held one out. To honesty, then. We clinked. To peace, I added. We sat in silence, sipping, letting the breeze wash over us. The trees rustled softly. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and went quiet. I thought about all the years I spent chasing crumbs, waiting for a nod, a thank you, a sign that I mattered. And now, I didn't need it. I had found something better. Self-worth, freedom, peace. And for once in my life, that was enough. Weeks passed. Leah kept her distance. Not in a bitter, we're done here kind of way, more like someone walking on eggshells around a truth they finally understood. And I let her. We texted once or twice. No drama, just surface level stuff. Enough to keep the line open without opening the floodgates. Mom, though, she didn't stay quiet for long. One morning she showed up. No call, no warning, just knocked on my door like she lived there. I saw her through the peephole dressed up like she was headed to Sunday brunch, holding a casserole dish like some kind of peace treaty. I thought about ignoring her, but I opened the door. Hi, sweetheart, she said, forcing a smile. I didn't say anything, just stepped aside. She walked in, looking around like she was in a museum she couldn't afford to visit. This is lovely, she said, setting the dish on my countertop. So peaceful. She didn't sit, just stood there, twisting the strap of her purse. I wanted to talk, she said finally, face to face. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I'm listening. Her eyes flicked around the room. Your sister told me everything. About the lottery, about the foundation, about what you said. Okay, she sighed. I guess I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I waited. Let the silence stretch. She swallowed. I always thought I was doing the right thing, giving Leah what she needed, encouraging her dreams. You never asked for much, so I assumed you didn't need much. I stopped asking, I said, because I stopped expecting. She nodded slowly, like she was finally catching up to something the rest of us knew years ago. I was proud of you, she said, quietly. I just didn't show it. That's the thing, Mom. I didn't need a parade. I just needed to feel like I mattered. Another long silence. Then she said, "Can we fix this?" I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She just looked tired, small, like a woman realizing she might have built her house on sand. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm not angry anymore. That's something, she nodded. I brought your favorite, she added, gesturing to the casserole. I smiled, just a little. You remember? Of course I do, she said. I just forgot to act like it. She left not long after that. No dramatic goodbye, no promises. Just take care of yourself. And for the first time, I believed she meant it. A few months later, I was walking through the local farmer's market, sun on my shoulders, coffee in hand, when I ran into Leah. She was with Derek. He looked worn out. His startup had failed. Again. Their car had a dent. Leah's eyes had lost that shiny Instagram-filtered gleam, but she smiled when she saw me. Hey. Derek gave me a nod. Congrats on the foundation. Saw the article. Right. The article. A local paper had done a quiet piece about it. Nothing flashy, but it had made the rounds. Thanks, I said. We're, doing okay, Leah added, like she needed me to know they weren't completely underwater. That's good, I said. I mean that. She smiled again, and for once, it felt real. Not a performance. Not bait. Just honest. Anyway, she said, we've got to run. But I'm glad we bumped into you. Same. And they walked away. That was the last real conversation we had for a long time. Not out of spite. Just life. We weren't enemies anymore. But we weren't close either. And that was fine. Months rolled into a year. The foundation grew slow, steady, intentional. I met kids like me. Kids who had been told be grateful instead of you're brilliant. I helped them find their voices, their paths, their shot. I bought a small cabin in the mountains for weekend escapes. I planted a garden. I learned how to fix things I used to replace. I stopped checking the family group chat. I started checking in with myself instead. One afternoon, Naomi and I sat on the patio, sipping lemonade, watching the sun dip behind the trees. Do you ever think about telling everyone the whole story? She asked. I shrugged. Sometimes. But the ones who matter already know. She smiled. And the ones who don't? I sipped my drink. They never did. A year to the day after I scratched that ticket, I found it again, still tucked in the drawer. A little faded, edges soft. I held it between my fingers for a while, remembering everything. The disbelief, the silence, the shift. It looked so small now, just paper, just ink. And yet, everything had changed because of it. I thought about framing it once, but I didn't need the reminder. I already lived in the proof. Instead, I slipped it back into the drawer right where it came from. Then I stood up, stretched, and walked out to the deck. The sky was painted in gold. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in forever, I felt free. Story 2. For 3 years, I thus provided my parents $3,000 every month. But they threw me out when I came for Thanksgiving. I always believed that I was providing for my family adequately. I always assumed that at 34, I was satisfying the expectations that come with being the oldest son. I have established a respectable life for myself. At a large computer firm, I work as an engineer and make a salary that most people would envy. Even though it's not particularly fancy, my house belongs to me. The $3,000 check I give to my parents each month, however, is more burdensome than the mortgage or the hard hours at work. Since the epidemic struck and destroyed their furniture company decades ago, things have been that way. My parents owned a modest business selling wooden furniture that was handcrafted. People enjoy what they do, but they were unable to recoup when orders stopped coming in when everything went down. They were left without money and in debt. I jumped in without hesitation at the time. Right now, family supports family. After almost 3 years, the $3,000 is no more a token of affection, but rather a stone that is fastened to my ankle. But it's more than simply the cash. The impact it has on my budget is difficult to overlook. I postpone taking a real trip or even saving for a larger home. The developing feeling that it's never enough is the painful part. I hear the same phrases every month. Alex, you're very successful. You have our admiration. Remember, nevertheless, that family always comes first. The implication is obvious, even if they don't state it directly. There is more I could do. Perhaps they are correct. I don't have a partner. No children, no significant costs other than my own. My coworkers discuss their children, the cost of private school, or how their wives spend more than they do. It's easy for me. But the bitterness still seeps in despite that. It sounds like success should put the needs of others above my own when I hear Lynn's guilt-ridden remarks during our weekly chats. My mother called last week to politely remind me about Thanksgiving dinner. I wasn't intending to skip it, really. It's been years since I missed a family get-together. Her tone, however, was clear. Remember, Alex, how crucial this is for us. We all need to be together since we've been through a lot. She didn't need to add, it's your obligation to be there. It was inferred. It wouldn't be that horrible, I convinced myself. Thanksgiving, there was always a hint of tension, conversations about finances and life decisions. The sporadic remarks about when I had at last calmed down. However, I made the decision to go above and above this year. Since I knew they couldn't afford it and wouldn't treat themselves, I chose a brand new 55-inch smart TV for them. It's more than simply a present. It is an offering for peace. Perhaps I hoped it would remind them that I'm trying my hardest and buy me some favor. However, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that this dinner would be different as the day drew nearer. Lately, my dad had been more reticent. Mom is more composed and observant. Something was wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint it. What was simmering beneath the surface was not your typical family drama. This storm seemed to be the kind that you don't notice until it's too late. I told myself it was nothing, even though I had a queasy feeling in my stomach. No matter how complicated our family is, it's still worth attending Thanksgiving because it's about family. I kept telling myself that as I packed the TV into my car and got ready to go over, anticipating whatever was on the other side of the dinner table. The air was crisply cold on Thanksgiving morning, and the only sound on the drive to my parents' house was the faint buzz of the radio. I practiced what I would say in a stressful situation. A happy beginning, perhaps a reminder about the new TV that's waiting in my van, along with a praise for the cuisine. The unpleasant sensation from the previous week wouldn't go away, even though it seemed ridiculous. Like getting ready for a job interview, the home felt different when I got there. It was not the friendly, hospitable mayhem of previous Thanksgivings. When my mother met me at the door, her eyes did not light up with a grin. She brushed by me to see how anything was doing in the kitchen, avoiding my eyes. My father hardly gave me a nod before vanishing into the living room. It was similar to entering a room where everyone was acting as if nothing had happened after a recent quarrel. Megan, my younger sister, was in the kitchen juggling a tray of side dishes. She had moved back in with our parents following her divorce last year, taking her 2 young kids with her. We hadn't been especially close growing up, but I tried to be sympathetic throughout her hard spell. Still, when I stepped in, I spotted her giving me a pointed look as she bent down to speak. Her remarks were a smack in the face. "You are aware that they are angry with you? They believe you are capable of more." I blinked, astonished. She busied herself setting up the food before I could reply, leaving me to sulk in the rising heat of the kitchen. My parents were already sitting in the dining room when I arrived, and the anxiety followed. The atmosphere seemed like a powder keg ready for a spark, even though the table was set nicely as usual. Conversation quickly shifted from the customary small chat that began dinner. My mother brought up the necessity for home maintenance and the growing expense of utilities. These days, my dad talked about how difficult it is to make ends meet. I nodded in agreement, but their remarks became more acerbic. My dad finally let out a sigh and revealed what they had been obviously keeping to themselves. "The $3,000 you provide us every month, Alex, is no longer sufficient." He enumerated the costs. The mortgage. Megan's children have medical expenses. The meaning was obvious even if the numbers blended together. They requested that I provide twice as much, totaling $6,000. I tried to seem calm as I clarified that I was unable to pay for it. I pointed out the TV I had just brought. My remarks appear to be ignored, even though I have already paid their utilities and mortgage. When my mother accused me of putting myself before the family, her voice faltered. When my dad said, "I've forgotten where I came from," his eyes narrowed. Megan then added her voice. She said that my life as a single person was simple in comparison to raising children alone, and that I had no idea what it meant to suffer. She painted me as conceited and self-indulgent by bringing up my business travels and home improvement projects. Her remarks hurt because they went beyond simple charges. It was like being betrayed. With each slur they hurled at me, the room seemed to get smaller. I was unable to speak for a time as my chest constricted. Their voices blended into a deafening symphony of annoyance and disappointment. I glanced at everyone seated at the table. My sister, my dad, and I are aware of how much has changed between us. I didn't believe I knew this family. Their expectations weighed heavily on me, and even though I wanted to defend myself, I knew it would be useless. They were not interested in an explanation. No matter the cost, they demanded more from me. I sat silently, breathing difficultly due to the heavy stress. I couldn't get rid of the sensation that something had broken irrevocably while the charges lingered. It was a slap of words, the proclamation of my father. I was no longer welcome in their home if I wasn't prepared to contribute more. Hung in the air, calming the commotion that had broken out seconds before. My initial reaction was one of incredulity, which was quickly followed by rage. It was more than just a request for additional funding. It was the way it was presented, as if my worth to them was expressed in monetary symbols. Before something inside of me exploded, I stood there in shock, leaving the TV beside the door as a reminder of what they obviously didn't value. I turned and walked away from the table. It was a blur on the way home. Everything that had been stated made my head race. Like a broken record, every charge and insult is repeated. A deep aching in my chest had taken the place of the rage by the time I got home. Family, I had always thought, was about love and support, but tonight had shattered that fantasy. It was difficult to overlook the consequences in the days that followed. Almost soon, I began receiving texts from my mom. Each one portrayed me as the bad guy who had split the family apart, combining guilt tripping with subtly made allegations. She ignored all I had previously given up and painted my unwillingness to provide additional money as selfish. The knowledge that she wasn't attempting to patch things up was more painful than the words themselves. All she wanted was for me to give in. Next up was Megan. She ignored the calls and texts. Rather, she vented her frustrations on social media, making ambiguous yet scathing remarks about others who left their families for their own comfort. Her friends' encouraging remarks and likes felt like salt on the wound. Each one makes me the villain while supporting her story. I tried to ignore it for a time. I tried my best to ignore my phone, stay off social media, and immerse myself in my job. However, I couldn't get rid of the persistent sense that something wasn't adding up. Parts of the picture my parents had drawn of financial distress didn't fully match. They discussed unforeseen expenses and growing costs. However, it appeared like they were asking for too much money, even taking Megan's predicament into consideration. When I ran into an old family acquaintance at the grocery store, the truth began to come to light. Almost casually, he said that it was good that my parents had been able to assist Megan in paying off her divorce obligations. I was halted in my tracks by the statement, "Debts from a divorce." I had never heard of it before. My payments were always presented by my parents as going toward bills and household costs rather than Megan's personal funds. When he mentioned that my dad's new car was a significant improvement over their previous one, the pieces began to come together. I was aware of my parents' hardships following the pandemic, and if things were as bad as they said, purchasing a new car seemed like a strange priority. I was increasingly dubious the more I considered it. If I didn't have enough money to put food on the table and keep the lights on, then just where had it been heading? The possibility not directed at me that my parents may not have been entirely truthful about their financial circumstances. I never questioned where the money went because I had complete faith in them. However, I was unable to get rid of the sense that I had been exploited. I made the decision to look farther because I was determined to find the truth, even if it meant facing the individuals I had previously believed I could always count on. This time, going back to my parents' house felt different. There was only a chilly determination to find answers, no expectation of a cozy family meal or mutual laughter. I drove in the driveway, braced for whatever confrontation lay within, armed with printed bank statements and a resolve to find out where my money had been going. My mother's startled demeanor swiftly changed to one of reserved politeness as the door creaked open. My dad pretended to be watching a news program in the living room, but his tense jaw told everyone. I quickly took a seat across from them. I gently stated that we needed to speak after placing the documents on the table. They initially attempted to deflect. My dad brought up a plumbing problem that had allegedly depleted their finances, and my mom added that Megan's children needed new clothes for school. But when I pressed for specifics, they hesitated. I pointed out the irregularities, how the numbers they asked didn't fit with the reported costs. It was like peeling back layers of an onion, each excuse unraveling until the truth became naked. The first blow came when I questioned them about Megan's indebtedness. My mom paused before saying that a substantial amount of my money had gone toward paying off Megan's credit cards and legal bills from her divorce. They'd presented it as a family need, stating she needed support to get back on her feet. The fury swelled up, but I forced it down, focused instead on the following inquiry. The new car, what about it? My dad muttered something about the previous one being untrustworthy, and his face flushed. I inquired as to whether the repairs they had stated covered the cost of the automobile purchase. He did not refute it. Rather, he rationalized it by claiming that they were entitled to some solace following their ordeal. The treachery was a shock. It was more than simply financial mismanagement. It has to do with a total disregard for my faith and sacrifices. Their shields weakened as the discussion went on, and the truth of what they had done became brutally obvious. In order to indulge in things they desired rather than merely necessities, they would utilize my assistance as a safety net. They also constantly made me feel bad about not accomplishing enough. Any last illusions I had about our family dynamic were shattered by the weight of their decisions. They reacted angrily and quickly when I informed them that I couldn't continue to help them in these circumstances. When my mother accused me of leaving them and prioritizing money over family, her voice broke. My dad's remarks that I've forgotten where I came from and that I'm no longer welcome in their house were even more devastating. Megan wouldn't be there if I didn't do my share. However, her words reverberated through their charges. Every choice they had made was justified by her requirements. Their rage seemed to be drowning me, but there was a feeling of clarity behind it all. I wasn't trying to let them down. It has to do with their exploiting me. Their unwillingness to own up to their faults or even entertain an apology spoke a lot. I came to the realization that I couldn't repair what was damaged with money or effort. The finality of my choice descended upon me as I got up to go. I informed them that unless they shown their ability to handle the money correctly, I would not be giving them another check. The ensuing hush was deafening. While my dad mumbled to himself and avoided looking into my eyes, my mom looked away, tears running down her cheeks. I was both relieved and heartbroken as I left that house. My connection with those who were meant to love me without conditions suffered as a result of the boundary I drew. I had never realized the depth of the treachery. I also couldn't get rid of the notion that there was no way out of this. As I drove off, our relationship was destroyed when I refused to believe their falsehoods, which made me question whether it had ever been true in the first place. Although it wasn't easy, I had to break up my relationship with my parents. Following the altercation, I decided to stop providing any financial assistance. It was self-preservation rather than spite. They were constantly texting and calling. Initially, they were all brimming with manipulation and remorse. I chose to disregard them. But when it got to be too much, the weight of what they had spoken remained. I banned their phone numbers. I couldn't allow them to drag me back into the same cycle of expectations and letdowns, even if it felt frigid. Megan didn't do any better when she tried to get in touch. She accused me of destroying the family and called me selfish. She blamed me for leaving her and her children, portraying herself as a victim. I didn't respond to her texts, which were full of the same passive-aggressive tone I had grown accustomed to. Trying to appease individuals who just regarded me as a resource to be used had taken up enough of my time, in years for the first time. Without the financial load, I felt free to breathe. I could concentrate on myself. I finally took a vacation, something I hadn't done for years. I began saving money for the future, a future that at last seemed possible for me. I even treat myself to certain items I've always wanted, but never justified, like a new bike and better house furnishings. Every purchase seemed like a step in the direction of taking back my life. The guilt was more difficult to get rid of. There were evenings when I wondered if I had made the correct decision. However, the hesitation vanished each time I considered the years of sacrifice and how they would exploit me. I understood that I didn't have to bear the guilt. Meeting their unreasonable expectations had only made their actions possible. My mother contacted me once again a year later. This time, she apologized and asked that we mend our relationship in a more gentle manner. There was a faint reminder of the way things had always been, though, and a tinge of expectation even then. I considered answering, giving them another chance, but I knew better. There would be no change. There had always been conditions attached to their love, and I was no longer prepared to pay the price. By the way, Story 3. This firm requires a vision like your brother's. Declaring, my father gave him my business. I didn't say a thing. Devastated, they pleaded a year later. The day I saw my father give my brother the keys to the company I had founded myself was the day that I at last realized what it meant to be completely alone. Sliding over the polished wood desk was the leather folder. It was Eric's sly smile, my father's inability to look me in the eye. Something inside of me was crushed by the weight of that moment, and I was never able to fully recover. I stood there, 30 years old, my spine twisted and my hands calloused from lugging Kane Electrical for more than 10 years, arriving before dawn for 14 years, night for 14 years, certifications and courses, 14 years of establishing your name in a community where your work and word were the only things that counted. With a signature, it was all taken, and the memory of my dad's bulky signet ring resting on the desk. Samuel never showed enough dedication. As if I wasn't standing there too stiff to purchase the book, my father said to Eric, "Someone with vision is needed by this organization." Vision? That's the name he gave it. When my 3-year-old younger brother, Eric, left college to spend a year in Thailand, that's the name he gave it. When Eric tried to open a nightclub and burnt up his meager cash, it closed in 6 months. When Eric arrived at construction sites, he named it that, either hungover or not. It was me, on the other hand, who spent midnight going over designs. It was me who got the Westridge development contract, which increased our revenue, and who updated our billing system. I was the one who always followed instructions and never voiced any complaints. When my father stated, "Someday, son, this will all be yours," who believed him? Then there was Heather. God, Heather. 3 years later, the mere mention of her name still makes my chest tremble, like if someone were rubbing their fingernails over a new scar. She and I met at a housewarming celebration for a customer. This woman had honey-colored hair, eyes that wrinkled at the corners when she smiled, and a bright, cheerful personality. We made quick progress. Too quickly. We may have been engaged within a year, looking at homes and organizing a wedding. I really embraced her into my universe. Meals with my folks on Sundays, work parties with my team. At the time, I considered it fortunate that she and Eric got along. I considered family harmony. I didn't notice the sidelong glances, the inside jokes, or how discussions would abruptly end when I walked into a room. In hindsight, I should have seen something wasn't right the evening Heather recommended. I answer the Boulder emergency call. Each trip is a 3-hour drive. She kissed me goodbye and added, "You have to be there for your clients. They trust you because of this." When I got back after midnight, I was exhausted but pleased of myself for managing the situation. An unknown vehicle was parked in our driveway, Eric's brand new BMW. As I headed into our bedroom and heard them, a cold pit formed in my stomach, which knew before my brain did. Those distinct noises that permanently alter you once you have listened to them. I don't recall much of the altercation. I remembered Heather holding blankets to her breast in fragments. Eric's face was one of frustration at being discovered, not even shame. Even worse news was delivered by the light that broke when I slammed the door the next morning. Heather had a baby. I had done a business vacation 6 weeks prior, so the time was perfect. Mine or Eric's? They fell in love, but she wasn't sure. They sincerely apologized. What broke me was my father's response, nor hostility toward his younger son, not sympathy for me. It was only a deliberate reworking of his intentions. A week later, he called us both to his office and explained that family comes first, and that blood is blood. "Samuel, you must comprehend. Your sibling will soon become a parent. Now he needs stability." My hands are still shaking when I think about what happened next. The firm transfer documents, the leather portfolio, and the house that was promised to Heather and me as a wedding gift, being turned over to her and Eric now, all for the sake of keeping family. All so ruthlessly effective, all so totally legal. My father remarked, not cruelly, "You'll land on your feet. You were always the one in charge. Eric is in worse need of this than you are." I realized then that I had been mistaking the two my entire life. My mother used a monogrammed handkerchief to wipe at her tears without saying anything. She would later call me and say that she supported me and didn't agree with my father. But she sat quietly when it counted, cooperation, pretended to be sympathetic. All I had with me when I left the office were my certification documents, and a void that reverberated with each pulse of the heart. I didn't shout. I made no threats. I just went outside, climbed into my vehicle, and drove till the gaslight illuminated. I took a job with Reynolds Contracting in Denver, which is 3 hours away, 2 days later. I didn't say goodbye. I modified my phone number, cut the cable all the way through. I leased a modest apartment close to my new workplace. Bare walls, used furniture. It feels different to start anew at 30 than it does at 20. Your back hurts more. There are jagged edges to your optimism. Silent evenings and work filled the first several months. I volunteered for the positions no one wanted and worked every overtime shift that was offered. I pushed myself to the limit. Promised. Sleeping without dreams. However, an unforeseen event occurred. As the months went by, without Eric's disarray, without the shadow of my father, not always attempting to prove myself, I discovered that I was genuinely skilled at what I did. Excellent. Reynolds acknowledged it as well. After 6 months, I was given the position of team lead. After 3 months, I was running my own cruise line. By the 1-year point, I was being called by name by clients. I obtained my master electrician's license, began teaching night classes at the trade school, and made new acquaintances who accepted me without knowing anything about my background. Whether I liked it or not, I had to deal with news from home. I erased my mother's heartfelt voicemails before hearing the first phrase. Unopened Christmas cards were returned. A dulling, but never entirely gone, agony that will not go away. The first tremors of Kane Electrical's downfall started 6 months after I departed. According to a text message from a former coworker, Eric insulted the customer so severely that they immediately canceled their $200 contract after showing up to the Peterson Project meeting intoxicated. I kept my fingers on the phone. Remove. No longer my concern. The safety infraction at the Westridge development followed. Eric neglected to check before shutting the site, leaving live wires exposed overnight. A formal warning from the licensing board and a fine of $15,000. After years of directly asking me to work with Kane Electricity, the superintendent now completely refused to do so. The storm was imminent and only a matter of time, and each update came like distant thunder. 3 of our 5 main commercial clients had left by the 18-month point, according to Eric. In an attempt to patch things up, Dad had begun to show up at construction sites. His dignity was eroding as he made excuses for his chosen successor. My lips tasted metallic from the irony. Not quite sadness, not quite satisfaction. Something more intricate, the dreary pain of validation. Word spread that Eric had appointed his drinking friends, men who couldn't distinguish between a light switch and a circuit breaker, as project managers. Inspection of 2 crucial installations was unsuccessful. After equipment failed due to defective wiring, a client filed a lawsuit for damages. According to industry rumors, suppliers have begun to demand advance payments. The final no-confidence vote. 1,000 cutbacks were killing the company I had put my heart and soul into. All of them may be linked to the time my father determined I wasn't deserving of my birthright. The murmurs turned into frantic whispers during my 3rd year away. In order to pay off growing bills, my father had mortgaged their home. Eric had given up all pretense of expertise and was drinking freely on construction sites. They were reviewing the company license. Heather had finally left him after a 4th serious safety infraction, taking my nephew, their son, or maybe my own son, to remain with her sister. The paternity was never verified. Every bit of information hit me like a ton of stones. I couldn't identify the feelings that made my chest clench. I felt nothing and didn't desire a name. Amid other words, I experienced too much to pinpoint a single emotion amid the storm. Here, I was creating something fresh, demonstrating proper behavior to apprentices. Occasionally, but not seriously, I doubt, healing gradually. Then came the day I saw my father standing in the entryway of the partially completed office building when I looked up from a junction box. Older, somehow smaller, the stoop of a guy carrying too much has taken the place of the confident stance. My name cracked like thin ice between his lips as he murmured, "Samuel." My hands kept working carefully, fastening wires with the accuracy that had come to define me. Every copper twist serves as a meditation and a partition between my hard-won tranquility and his despair. "Please, son, 5 minutes." I gave my apprentice a nod to take a rest before turning to confront the man who had destroyed my entire world. The alterations were startling up close. Bloodshot eyes swirling with silent entreaties. Gray skin pulled too tightly over cheekbones. Hands that shook a little. I learned how to grip my first screwdriver from those calm hands. Something in me twisted, not nearly sympathy. "You appear worn out," I spoke in a neutral tone. He tried to grin, but it never made it to his eyes. "Every day, your mother inquires about you." The weight of familial duty and the well-known manipulation, like a hand crushing down on the nape of my neck. I waited without saying anything. He said, "The business," and then cleared his throat. "We're having trouble. I'm sure you've heard." I nodded once the quiet stretched between us like a live wire. Eric made an effort. The lie hung awkwardly in the air as he spoke. He did. "However, it appears that he lacks your attention to detail. Is that the new name for it?" I spoke quietly, but with a steely edge. He winced and glanced down at his pricey shoes, which were now worn and scuffed. "The legacy of your grandfather. Cane men for 3 generations. He had given me the same speech since I was a child. The dual burden and gift of family history. I was mistaken. At last he spoke, the words tumbling heavily between our lips. Like stones into still water, 3 words fell into the void between us. "It's 3 years too late." Eric ran it into the ground. "We're about to lose everything. The business, the residence. Your mother's beside herself." My heart thundered in my chest, betraying me. I thought I'd remove this urge, this longing for him to finally notice me, realize my value. The approbation I'd pursued my entire life hung before me now, like bait in a trap. "I'll sign it all over to you," he continued, eyes shining with frantic hope. "Full ownership, no strings. Come back and save it, son. It's your legacy, too." My laugh astonished even me, hollow and pointy, scratching up from a deep, wounded place. "My heritage. Eric received my inheritance from you. Though once you choose him, it was no longer mine. I was wrong." He edged his voice in desperation as he admitted, "The greatest error of my life." He took a step closer, the bitter smell of failure blending with the old cologne. "Samuel, your mom cries at night. She is missing you. Both of us do." As usual, the guilt card was used with skill. My chest tightened as memories came rushing back. Sunday meals, fishing excursions, and infrequent displays of delight when I had mastered a challenging skill, the father I had loved, in spite of everything. "But this business," he said, taking advantage of my brief tenderness. "Our family has owned it for 3 generations. It was made by your grandfather out of nothing. Is it truly possible to let it die?" Then something changed in my chest. Clarity, not forgiveness. The understanding that I had changed since leaving his office 3 years prior. His hunger for this man's acceptance had defined that guy. Something else characterized me. "Right now, it's dead already." Silently, I said, "The day you decided I wasn't good enough, you murdered me." His fingers were shaking as he sought for my arm. I took a step back, making little yet firm movements. "A line. Do you not see?" His voice broke. "I'm attempting to correct it. Son, I need you. No need for respect or affection. Simply necessary. Conveniently, you choose Eric over me." I informed him that every word was definitive and purposeful. "Now that it's required, you don't get to pick me." With my shoulders slumped under a burden I've decided to let go of, I watched him go. I slept better that night than I have in 3 years. The next setback was a text message from an unidentified number 2 weeks later. "We should discuss how your son, Heather, constantly manages to entice me back in." My stomach sinking into a bottomless pit, my hands shaking as I gazed at the screen. "Your son?" 2 words that completely upended my meticulously planned existence. The paternity test wasn't that complicated. The clinic's cheek swab, 2 weeks of introspection, and restless nights, speculating about potential outcomes. The findings were released on a Tuesday morning, 99.8% likelihood. Lewis Kane was 2 years old when I became his father. We met at a playground close to her sister's residence. As soon as I laid eyes on him, this little person with my eyes, my grave demeanor, and my propensity to research topics before interacting with something ancient and primordial caused a change in my chest. The knowledge that nothing will ever be the same again was like a tectonic upheaval of the heart. The fading bruise on her temple and the shadows beneath her eyes were not entirely concealed by Heather's muted makeup. I felt a chill descend upon me at seeing it. In other ways, she appeared both younger and older, worn down and vulnerable in a manner she had never let herself be with me. As she watched Louis on the swings, she explained that Eric had gone. He and a woman he met online are currently in Arizona. Last month, the divorce was completed. Why inform me now? I posed the query that had been bothering me ever since she texted me. Why not? When did he get born? Her fingers twitched the strap of her handbag uncomfortably as she averted her gaze. Her voice caught as she murmured, I wanted to tell you. I could tell a mother knew Samuel as soon as I felt him kick. I paused, allowing her to finish. Eric changed and began drinking more after I told him I needed a paternity test. Her gaze shifted to the receding bruise and then back to my phone. We would lose everything if the kid belonged to you, he added. The house, the business, and the respect of his father. I clenched my jaw. So you gave me the impression, he cursed. After everything has calmed down, we conduct a test. Her voice trailed off as she intervened. Faster now claimed that his father wouldn't ever need to know that we were able to work things out. However, after the kid was born, Eric began to experience issues at work. Stop. Her eyes were wiped. He persuaded me that maintaining the status quo was simply more convenient. It would be pointless to ruin everyone's life by informing you. For nothing. Flatly, I repeated, my son was worthless. Echoing my father's admission, which came too late, she muttered, I was wrong. It felt unfixable by the time I realized how utterly mistaken I was. How do you let someone know that you haven't seen their child in more than a year? Tears filled her eyes as they finally met mine. After that, Eric became aggressive. I was unable to. I had no idea how to make that word easier. The route of least resistance that had shaped my family's decision-making terrain into a treacherous one. However, I sensed something my father had never provided beneath Heather's words. Sincere regret, muddled by anxiety. As my son went down the slide, I saw him laugh. My son, who was conveniently kept away from me. My son was in need of me. Eric was gone now. Perhaps we might try again, I reasoned. For Louis's sake, Heather took a risk and touched my hand. Samuel, we got along well. I no longer felt anything at all from the contact that used to make me tingle. Tomorrow, I'll be hiring a lawyer. My gaze remained fixed on Louis as I spoke. We'll figure out support and custody, lawfully. In the right way. Samuel, one interrupted her to say, I'll be a father to him, the greatest dad I can be. But Heather, you and I are done. Since the night I discovered you with my brother, we have been done. In the months that followed, I made a life that could accommodate Louis, changed to a managerial role with more consistent work schedule, discovered a 2-bedroom apartment next to a park, constructed a bedroom for him that had a nightlight that projected stars onto the ceiling and dinosaur stickers on the walls. He was mine on Wednesday nights and every other weekend. We developed rituals, like as tales before bed and pancakes on Saturday mornings. Little holy rites that started to mend. Something in each of us. Vanessa, a commercial architect with a sharp sense of humor and perceptive eyes, and I met her at a supplier's conference. Our connection grew gradually and methodically. I had changed. Where you are. Yes, but also more forthright about my needs and desires. I knew exactly where we were going by the time I presented her to Louis. A year after my father's arrival, the last altercation took place. Eric unexpectedly and uninvitedly showed up at my employment site. Wild-eyed and thinner, he exuded the frantic vitality of a guy who was running out of alternatives. So, he yelled, we're shutting next month. Dad's heart attack was minor. To cover her medical expenses, Mom sold her jewels. Everything is collapsing, and you're simply what? Living your life. Acting as though we don't exist. I refused to get sucked into his pandemonium and kept going over the designs. What I'm doing is just that. You could assist. If you so desired, you could save everything. I had a peculiar sensation of calm as I stared at my brother, actually looked at him. Eric, I'm not liable for repairing what you damaged. No more. Your family is involved. When he yelled, heads turned. No, I responded coolly. My family is Louis. I'm making Vanessa my family. Every day the folks I've chosen pick me back. They are my relatives? Eric's bravado gave way to the terror below, and his face collapsed. I briefly had a glimpse of the younger sibling. I had assisted with homework, taught how to ride a bike, and shielded from bullies. I felt a twinge of regret for what may have been. I apologize, he muttered. Everything was damaged by me. Now I am aware of that. Too late, too little, the recurring theme in my connection with my family. But while I stood there, I came to a crucial realization. I didn't need their excuses anymore. It was their regret, not mine, that they had to bear. Eric, goodbye, I said, returning my attention to my task. Not mean, just the last one. One of my team came carefully up behind him. Is everything well, boss? I surveyed my life, my employment, my team, and the job site, constructed according to my specifications. Yes, I did say that everything is just as it should be. Through common connections, I learned 3 months later that Kane Electrical had permanently closed. After selling their home, my parents relocated to an Arizona retirement community. Eric had accepted a position in Nevada as a sales representative for an electrical supply business. Like a thin layer of snow covering the landscape, without altering its fundamental form, the news descended upon me. I just acknowledged that some chapters come to an unresolved finish without feeling any sense of victory or fulfillment. Even after healing, some wounds leave scars. I got a little surprise in the mail last week. The ancient multimeter that my grandpa had used to teach me about circuits when I was 8 years old was inside. Just the worn-out instrument that had ignited my passion for my vocation with no note. My mom did it. Her interpretation of an olive branch raised suspicions in my mind. I put it on the shelf in my home office, next the plan for the first structure Vanessa and I had worked on together, and the framed picture of Louis and me at the zoo. Finally, the past, present, and future were in alignment. Living well is said to be the best kind of retaliation. I'm not aware of that. I do know, though, that sometimes what you truly need your father's praise, your family's history, the company you helped start becomes a ghost of what you thought you wanted most. I needed to be appreciated, to be selected, to construct something genuine, something that a signature couldn't take away. Now I'm constructing that day by day. Furthermore, unlike the company my grandpa founded, its history cannot be betrayed or transferred in a leather portfolio. My love for Vanessa, the teachings I teach my kid, the homes I assist with wiring, and the apprentices I educate are all examples of this heritage. Every month, the solid physical weight of Vanessa's head on my shoulder or Louis, resting on my chest, replaces the phantom weight of carrying my family's expectations, though some days I still wake up with it. I'll bear that burden. Thank you. It is liberating to carry that weight.